See, Mousetrap, this is how you work characters into the public domain in your hands. Hey, what's up, you guys? It's me, Derek, here the overview. I just watched Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, and with the sequel for the first one, I gotta say, who would have thought that a sequel to a really bad copyright claim, I wouldn't say copyright claim, but more the fact that the makings of that first movie, it was the moment where Winnie the Pooh entered public domain, and people thought, okay, you can't make a Winnie the Pooh horror movie exactly as you could, because the way we saw the first one, we saw it just with those characters, but they look like guys in masks. But going into sequel for this, I gotta say, I had a really good time with this one. Christopher Robin revealed the whereabouts of Pooh and Piglet out there, so now Pooh is coming back for his revenge, and bringing in some new friends with this one, with Owl and Tigger to join the mix. That's all I can say for the plot, and for what I can tell, this movie, I feel like, is the revamped or rebooted version of what should have been the first movie, if I'm being honest with you. Like, when the trailer for the first one came out, it looked a bit cheap, it looked a bit generic, and yes, I can tell that the studio that had these guys, they were limited budget, and with this one, they got a bit more money, and you can tell with some of the kills, some of the practical effects, and some of the set design, because I thought they were going to go basic, generic, but they really try expanding the lore and a bit more of the story between Winnie the Pooh. And for starters, they recasted Christopher Robin with Scott Chambers, and for his portrayal, I gotta say, his character in this movie, it feels more like somebody who's been traumatized, who's been dealing with fear all his life, and to be honest, this representation of Christopher Robin, I feel like it's a bit more actual, I wouldn't say accurate, but I would say this one is actually a Christopher Robin that's dealt with some stuff after the experiences he had in the first movie. This feels like a more complete person, since in the first one, he was a bit generic. He was just tied down by Pooh. He wasn't being able to do anything. He wasn't even able to shine until the last couple minutes of that movie. But in this one, his life is in the dumps. Everybody doesn't even like him. They think he's the reason for the whole massacre that happened in the first movie. I don't even blame him, because the way Pooh and Piglet are described in this movie, the way they said that these are humanoid hybrids that are based around animals, I'm like, okay, that sounds ridiculous enough itself. But no one in the town believes him, and everybody knows that there are still secrets of them out there, so who knows if they would have been able to catch them on the path. The biggest upgrade in this are the actual characters like Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, and weirdly enough, Owl, to a point where all four of them are a bit more enhanced since you last saw them. Some of the makeup has been better. Some of them are more animalistic, like they don't look like guys in masks. There are certain characters I like two in specifics. Pooh is a bit more amped up, and to be honest, I feel like the way they designed him for this, I feel like in the first movie they made him out to be like, he's the passionate one, he's the one who still holds on to the memory of the Christopher Robin. But in this movie, he has a utter hate for Christopher Robin and is out to go get him too. And with some of the kills with him, he's carrying around a bear trap, so he's basically like throwing a bear trap at people and decapitating them. And I feel like, okay, that's cool and all, but he still is more animalistic, where he gets to use some other features like a bear, which I'm like, okay, so see, stuff like that is stuff I wanted to see in the first movie, not just them hold guns or knives or something like that, because I feel like, yeah, if you're telling me these are actual humanoid hybrids, why are they holding guns and knives and not just feeding on you like an actual bear? And Tigger in this too, because you don't get a lot of Tigger. You get to see him until the very end of this movie, which, yeah, he was a bit late because he wasn't in the public domain just yet, but at least they got to include him a bit in this one. But him specifically, and the way his kills are, he's crazy in the same way you see him in the cartoon. Like, the wonderful thing about Tigger is I'm the other one. He doesn't even say a line like that, but the way he's hyperactive and fast, he's clawing at somebody like he's Freddy Krueger or something. And the way his mannerism is, because he keeps saying, bitch, calling somebody like that. And I feel like, okay, they kind of did take a little bit of Freddy notes on this, since it's almost Freddy adjacent. But not gonna lie, him and Pooh were the best ones who actually did a lot in this movie, and their kills were some of the most creative I've seen. All of that aside, I feel like, yeah, I'm getting a lot of highlights for this movie, telling you a bit of the good, but there is a little bit of things where I'm like, okay, you fixed a couple things up from the first movie. Hopefully you can at least try to improve it better on, since we already know this is technically the start of a universe. I wouldn't say the actual start of a universe just yet. We're in a second movie already, and with the next couple ones we're going to get those original stories. But the backstory and everything to Pooh and his friends, I feel like the way they explored it in the first movie, You just found out about them, like the same way Christopher Robin imagined it in his head, or he actually went to the Underacre Woods in the cartoons. That was the way it was described in the first movie. But in this movie, they change up a bit of the story, which, okay, I feel like that's interesting. But then again, I feel like I like the mystery. Like, I don't need an explanation of why these characters are like this, or what made them animalistic, or what made them who they are in the first place. But I feel like if they were to do that, they could have at least made it clearer in the first one, even though I feel like they didn't plan this ahead, since this feels like an actual reboot, even though it's a sequel in this case. And I feel like there was a lot you could have explored from that, because even though this is a sequel technically, you could have at least developed a bit of the movie to see, okay, we saw everything with Christopher Robin, how everything was traumatized. Now let's look at the other side and see Pooh, Owl, Piglet, find out what happened to them, because we get to see him do some kills, but that's the most you see out of those characters. Like, you don't get to see everything like in the first movie where you see Pooh look at Christopher Robin, he's shedding a tear, looking back into the past. You don't see any of that in this movie. You just see them as the actual villains, and you see Christopher Robin take the forefront. Some of the kills are amazing, but then again, you still get into that little factor where I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. I know I'm not supposed to take it seriously since it's just Winnie the Pooh, but I feel like a bit of the kills and everything they do in here is a bit more exaggerated than it was in the first movie, because the first one tried to take it all serious. Like, these are actual killers out there, and you're like, okay, it's just Pooh and Piglet. I'm not going to take it seriously. But in this movie, some of the kills are just weird, where you get snapping necks, decapitations, body limbs being ripped apart. But then again, it's like, okay, now I believe it since they're using actual force. It doesn't make sense, but at least it's more creative and fun instead of just being all dark and brooding like in the first one. All I can say is that for the sequel, I had a bit more fun than I did in the first time. And at least this is how you should do something with these public domain characters or IP infringed characters. Interpret these characters like the Grimm stories. I already know that they try doing horror takes on Grimm fairy tales, but at least I don't think Winnie the Pooh is based on a fairy tale. I think it's just based on a book. But the way they do the characters in this is something I want to see moving forward with this franchise. And this isn't it. We already know this is the start of the Poohniverse. And by 2025, we're going to see how this whole monster universe is going to assemble. Now, do you have to watch the first one to understand this one? I'd say no, not really. It feels like the beginning of this movie actually makes it more clear in understanding of what happened in the first movie. So if you have any curiosities to go see that first one, I wouldn't mind if you go see it just for some context. But if you're going into the second one, going into it like, okay, this is the first movie, I feel like this is a better start than an actual sequel, if I'm being honest with you. If you're down for a decent horror movie, you can check this one out and at least say, okay, unlike The Mousetrap, which uses a public domain character and just says, okay, he's the killer, and not do a good story behind the character itself, you don't get any good results. But unlike this movie, you see the characters, you see them expand the story, and you get to see a little bit of the backstory you never thought would be creative, because the way they show young Christopher Robin in this, imagine the same story in the Disney version or any other version you see Winnie the Pooh. But imagine through all the honey, through all the adventures, even through all the carnage you don't know is going on in the background. That's what Christopher Robin saw as a kid, and at least his memories in his head hid it to see the realities of Pooh and Piglet and all these guys. Because I never thought of it that way, but the way they showed it off in this movie is like, no, these guys are actual demons. That's a little interpretation I never thought I'd see. But for the most part, at least that makes sense instead of just saying, Steamboat Willie, kill somebody, and that's it. Alright guys, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. All my social media is down in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.